Hey folks, Brian here. Today I'm updating the Ponzi2.io website, and I was querying GitHub to get the public repository's commit count. But now I want to change that query to get the star count. And if you could star the repository, thanks in advance. So anyway, on the right hand side we have the code that was getting the total commit count. And this query is written using the GraphQL language, and GitHub migrated from their REST API to this GraphQL API, and some of the reasons are the ability to find precisely the data you want, the only data you want, and lets you replace multiple REST calls with a single call. So right now I'm getting just the total commit count, but I'm going to add to that query to also get the star count. So doing two things in one query. So let's get started. And right now your allowed operations are queries and mutations. Since we're not changing anything, we're not mutating anything, we're just going to stick to queries. And here we can see we have a top level query object, and the thing about queries is to form a query you must specify fields within fields until you return only scalars. So if you just have query, that's too vague. We have to keep digging deep, going down and down into the structure until every node, every leaf node of this query's sort of graph resolves to some value, like total count. So let's check this out. We've got the query, and here we have query, and now I had repository. So if we scroll down in the documentation under fields, there should be a repository, and yep, there is. And in the documentation you can see there's name and owner and types with exclamation marks. So we need to specify both name and owner, and here I've specified the owner as myself and the name, and this matches the GitHub repository, the owner and the name. So now we click on repository and go deeper, and since there's more fields and more things, we've got to keep going down the tree. And I've already done my homework before making this video, of course, but one of the fields on here is called stargazers, and that is a list of users who have starred this starable. So now I'm going to add that here. So it's a field of repository, so within the repository we're going to do stargazers, and there's some arguments but nothing is required. There's no exclamation points on any of these things, but there's more underneath it. It's a type of stargazer connection. So let's click on stargazer connection. Now down here we've got a field called total count. So over here I'm going to add total count. So that should do it. And what is going on here is I'm creating an anonymous struct where I don't give this struct a name, but I do define what field is on it. I'm only using it within the scope of this function really quickly, so I'm not defining a type for it. And this field has just one value here, a query, a literal string using backticks. And I found this is the easiest way to specify the GraphQL queries. And then we encode this thing as a JSON object. So the graph query becomes a JSON object with a query field and set to some string. We make the request, add some authorization, and then now what's interesting is in GraphQL your query, the response looks the same, and it kind of maps back to what you specified. So here we've got a query, a repository, default branch ref. So we're going to create a response structure for the JSON API to reflect to. It's got data, repository, default branch, and I'm using anonymous structs again because it's a throwaway type. I don't need to reuse it anywhere else. But you can see this mirrors the query language we did. So within repository, I'm going to also put stargazers, struct, total count, int. So now you can see this mirrors what we added in the query. And Go's JSON API, specifically the decoder, is going to reflect the JSON response into this structure type I've created here. And right now this this returns the commit count, and I don't want to change the signature right now for this demonstration, but let's print out what the response looks like. We're going to use +v to show the structs, the structure tags, and let's print out the response, since we're decoding the HTTP response into a variable called R, and R is our structure that the JSON API is going to reflect and fill in. Okay, let's add a /n too. Yep, I've already prepared and done this video, but let's see if it works. Okay, I'm going to run Control-Shift-B to start the server. And here's our line here. And my server kind of gets all this initial data on the first call on startup. Of course, if it doesn't get this data, it still starts up and just puts like question marks, because we don't want to break just because GitHub is down, right? But you can see the stargazers is 12. And if we do a quick spot check on the GitHub page, there's 12 stars. So hopefully you can star the repository, and let's get to 20 at least. But this is an example of how simple it is to query this star information. And Go-wise, the key points are using the JSON API backticks to create this query object so you can easily enter it. Don't have to worry about new lines or escaping, all that stuff. Then it's using anonymous structs to quickly reflect the query response into something easy to use with Go, and decoding and printing it out. So hopefully you saw how I created a query with GraphQL using the documentation and Go, and I hope it helps you out. Thanks for watching. Star the repo. See you later. Bye.